welcome back to Marshmallow Reads. I'm Marcy, and today I'm going to be telling you about the 5 books I read in May. So May was a bit of a slow reading month for me. I don't know necessarily what happened. I was in the middle of reading and was planning on finishing Haunting Bombay. I mentioned this one if you watched my Asian readathon vlog. That didn't happen. I do still plan on finishing this book eventually, but I think right now I'm going to put it on pause. I have it available through Hoopla, so I can just recheck it out whenever. I don't have to wait for a waiting period. But I think trying to finish that in 4 days or whatever at the end of May kind of put me in a bit of a reading slump. So I'm going to go with the flow and just read what is calling to me. And the book that I instead picked up was The Song of Achilles, which I finished a couple days ago, in June though, so you'll have to wait a little bit to hear my thoughts on that one. I mean, sneak peek, I loved it. You should read it. Okay, let's get on to the books. So the first book I finished in May was Every Last Fear by Alex Finlay. So it is a thriller, it's a mystery thriller, but maybe you don't need to actually read this one. I think it was a pretty mediocre thriller, to be honest. The mystery was enough to keep me going through the entire book, but the journey was not all that fun. I felt bad for the main character, Matt, but he has the personality of basically an empty paper bag. Fine, but not super interesting. So spending the time with him just wasn't fun. I just wanted to know the facts. I probably should have just read the spoilers instead, but I did not. So the story. Matt is an apolitical Midwesterner, whatever that means, who is studying film at NYU. And he has to deal with a lot of shit, unfortunately. So when he was little, elementary or middle school age, he had to deal with his older brother being arrested and then convicted for the murder of that brother's high school sweetheart. And now Matt gets a surprise visit by this FBI agent who has the unfortunate job of telling him that the rest of his family, Matt's dad, mom, younger sister, and kid brother, have all been found dead in this vacation rental in Tulum, Mexico, where they were staying for the duration of their spring break. And that's rough. That is awful. I feel really, really bad for him. Thankfully, his friends from NYU are being very kind and supportive, but hearing about those friends is kind of weird because their personalities feel weird. For example, there's Ganesh, Matt's best friend. He is an international student from India. He's also a build-the-wall conservative, a weed enthusiast, hardcore 420 enjoyer, and a brilliant pre-med student, all in one. I don't know, it's just conflicting information. Mostly the build the wall, MAGA type conservative. What? Apparently this kid grew up in some penthouse in Mumbai, that was worth $10 million. I have met my fair share of out-of-touch rich kids, but even then, I didn't necessarily believe that this guy was a real person. I also get the feeling that this author just seems to enjoy picking on woke liberals. On page 59, Ganesh calls their friend group the Island of Misfit Toys, which, whatevs. But another friend in that friend group chided him because this was a reference to Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, which apparently to this person, she thought that it was racist and homophobic for reasons that neither Matt nor I can comprehend. What? Where is this coming from? Okay, and there's also a point where a random character makes a aren't all vegans super annoying type of joke. There aren't any vegans in this story. It just came up and happened and then went away. There wasn't anything that was too out there, super egregious. It just kind of stuck out to me. But anyway, as for the mystery itself, I did find that the culprit wasn't too obvious. Like, I did have some fun going through different guesses, trying to figure out, okay, could it be this in this scenario, or maybe this guy? And that was fun. But I also kind of wish I had just, like I said, looked up the spoilers so I could have spent my time reading a better book. I originally gave this one a 3, but I changed it. It's getting a 2 stars. It's not for me. Next is Binti by Nnedi Okorafor. I had heard about this one for a while, and I'm super happy I finally picked it up. It is a sci-fi novella, really. It's super short, really quick read. It's only like 98 pages, so pretty great, especially if you're in a reading slump. It is sci-fi, specifically like Afrofuturism, which is really neat, and the characters and the description of the world in this is so cool. I'm very excited to keep going in this series. The main character, Binti, she is the first ever Himba person to ever be offered a spot at this prestigious Uzma University. It's like the finest school in all of the galaxy. Pretty impressive. And this world's Himba people closely resemble our world's Himba people. They're an indigenous people who live in northern Namibia, and they have a very unique way of dress. They have these like pretty intense like ankle bangles, bracelets, things that they wear to ward off snakes, and pretty distinctively they have this gorgeous red color to their skin and their hair that comes from this clay that they make out of some precious stones and herbs, and it's really neat. So they wear this clay on their skin and hair both for beauty and as a connection to the earth, but also for hygienic purposes and to protect themselves from the sun and bug bites. So Binti is also described as having this red clay, I believe it's pronounced Ojize, could be wrong on that, but she has this on her, and she has like a special jar with her that she's taking to the university to continue to do this practice. And like I was saying, Binti is the first of her people to go to the school, and in doing so, she also has to leave her family and her homeland behind, which very few Himba people have ever really done. So that's hard on itself. And on top of that, she also has to deal with a bunch of other students picking on her for how she looks. The port that she is leaving out of is in Africa, and all the other students going to this university on this transport are also African. But that does not mean that they are all accepting of each other's differences, so she's getting bullied. But soon after the transport shuttle leaves, shit hits the fan when some aliens force their way on board. I'm not gonna say any more, because like I said, it's a very short book, don't want to spoil anything. So if you liked this description, if you are interested in Afrofuturism, then you should definitely check this one out. I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. Next, we have Harrow the Ninth by Tamsyn Muir. This is the second in the Locked Tomb trilogy. This comes after Gideon the Ninth, which I loved. And getting into this book was kind of rough. There is a second person POV writing, so like a lot of you know? And it did kind of throw me off, but I got used to it eventually. It was fine. This story starts off and is mainly focused on this training story arc with Haro, and it was fine, but I did miss the like mystery house and all the characters from the first book, and we see a bit of that in some flashbacks, but it's not the same. Oh well. Meeting and interacting with the Emperor God himself was kind of weird. Like, he is just a normal guy. Yeah, he's 10,000 years old and all powerful, but like, he's just a dude named John. So it was kind of weird, but also fun to see like different scenarios play out. Yeah. There, in this series in general, but also in this book, there are so many like just like examples of cool as hell imagery. Here are some of my favorites. Creating a harpoon out of bone and tendon, pretty metal. Haro also has this like almost like exoskeleton body armor that looks like an extra rib cage thing, also pretty metal. And there's also like this like river that they have to cross through to get to, You know, I'm not entirely sure what the river is made out of or why they're crossing into it. Something with like the spirit and the soul. I don't fully remember. But anyway, there's like at some point a little bubble dimension in this river, and that was really cool. So now I'm going to talk a little bit about my favorite moments in the book that are taken out of context, so they're pretty spoiler free. But if you want to remain completely zero spoilers, spoiler free, then go ahead and skip to this time code. Okay, so probably my favorite scene in the entire book is the explosive soup scene. So Harrow made some soup with some bone marrow. Yeah, if you know what I'm talking about, you know it was intense. And then there's this change in writing in the last like 100 or so pages of the book, and it was so good. Like, I love the wit, love the attitude. Like, you can hear this person smirking. It's great. Oh, and then on page 475, I absolutely burst out laughing at this dad joke. Hi, not fucking dead. I'm dad. Like, just so many things. It's good. All right, so here are my non-spoilery final thoughts. I did miss the characters and the setting from the first book, but this book was still pretty fun. Not as fun as the first one, but still good in its own way, and I did like the continuation of the story and hearing more about the lore of the lictors and God, so that was neat. I am really looking forward to the third book. Hopefully it's more similar to the first than the second, but I will take whatever I get. And I gave Harrow the Ninth 4 out of 5 stars. Okay, so the final 2 books that I'm going to be talking about from May, I also did like an in-depth vlog for the Asian Readathon, so I'm going to keep my thoughts fairly short on these 2. First is Know My Name by Chanel Miller. Oh boy. So I need to reread this one. I listened to it in the audio book form. Holy crap. That, I think I'm happy with that decision because Chanel Miller, she actually narrates the audiobook. So hearing her tell her story was intense and a lot of feels, you know? And I guess I should do a brief synopsis to let you know what on earth I'm talking about. So Chanel Miller is the Emily Doe from the Brock Turner Stanford case. And originally she had published an anonymous statement, her like personal impact statement that she read in court on the day of sentencing, technically to the judge, but more directed at Brock. And that like blew up on the internet. It went viral through BuzzFeed and like all these other sites. So you may have already read that before, but this book is really an expansion on that personal impact statement. She goes into all the details, like so many details about her experience leading up to that night, because she's like just like a normal day, having dinner with her family, getting ready with her sister and friends to go out to this party at this frat house, and how she ends up waking up in a hospital and trying to piece everything together and realizing what happened to her, and then just every other thing that she has to deal with because of this asshole. Like, she did nothing wrong. She didn't like sorry, it's so frustrating to talk about it because anytime you talk about sexual assault cases, the victim is always blamed. No matter what. They could have been like peak Puritan pure and they're still gonna get blamed. They're gonna say that, oh, they were asking for it because of how they dressed, how they talked, what they did, because they drank. You know, so many excuses are made for the perpetrator, and all the focus is on the victim, really. And it's heartbreaking. So your choices kind of are to prosecute and go through this re-traumatization over and over again in hopes of having some sort of consequences to this crime, or you don't, and basically you just let them get away with it. And it's beyond frustrating. It is infuriating. It's heartbreaking. It's a lot. And I really felt for Chanel while listening to this. It was a lot. Like I said, I'm happy I listened to it first. I do want to like get the physical copy so I can like highlight stuff. It just got me like that. So if you think you can handle this sort of story and are interested in hearing about Chanel's story, I would highly recommend it. I gave this one a 5 out of 5 stars. Okay, lastly, we have Raven Stratagem by Yoon Lee. This is another sequel. This is the second book in this series. I'm not sure how many books are going to be in it, but this comes after Nine Fox Gambit, which I read last year. And this series and this story is sci-fi, and it is heavily focused on like war and military and like political stuff. So if that kind of thing interests you, I would recommend starting with Nine Fox Gambit. This one does a pretty immediate continuation of the first book's story, and it focuses on one of the characters from the first book, Shos Jadao, and he's like this undead, super amazing like tactician in like, you know, for war fighting. He's really good at winning fights. He's never lost a battle in his life or his 400 years of undead life, and he's being kept alive by the government because he's really good at killing other people and winning battles. But in this book, he kind of like has escaped the government's control and has kind of taken over a fleet of ships to continue fighting the enemy of the state, which they have named the heretics. Basically, any person who goes against their very intense rule that is focused on this, I'm gonna say religion, but it doesn't necessarily feel divine in that way, like a normal religion would. It's like an intense list of rules that everyone has to adhere to in order for these certain powers and technologies to continue working based off of a high calendar. So instead of like a holy text, they have this high calendar that they have to adhere to. And anyone who doesn't is a heretic and thus needs to be exterminated, apparently. So Jadao is taking over this fleet, but also still fighting enemies of the state. And you're wondering why, and is it going to work, and who is also going to be tainted in the process. And it's fun. I did enjoy this one, and we get some new characters introduced to this book that are based off of like the fleet that he overtook, and also some like high political power people, and including some trans characters, which I was excited to see. Like, just straight up like, this guy's trans, but he's also just a normal guy. So, you know, it's fun. Yeah, I think that's all I'm gonna say on that one. If you want to hear more thoughts, like I said, you can check out my vlog. I gave this one a 4 out of 5 stars. All right, that is it for May. Maybe you found a new recommendation, a new series you want to start. Who knows? Maybe. It's only 5 books, so, you know. I am feeling better at the start of June. I already finished 1 book. I am in the middle of like 3 others. Also, so a couple tips if you're ever in a reading slump. Some ideas that help me is if I'm in a book that I can feel is making me sluggish, I'm not really like excited to read it, put it down. It's okay. If you own it or not, it'll always be there for you to go back to, whether you have to like check it out from the library again or whatever. It's okay. You can also just never pick up that book again. It's fine. There are so many books out there and they keep getting published. So really, you you only have so much time to live, so maybe don't waste that time reading books you don't like. So I'm okay putting a pause on Haunting Bombay because I have gotten really excited to read Song of Achilles. I like busted through that in just like a few days. I'm also reading a couple graphic novels, a couple other queer reads for like Pride Month. So, you know, do read what is exciting to you. Don't feel like you need to finish a book just because you started it. And one other tip is just look for shorter books or short stories even. Like one reason why I love graphic novels is because there are a lot of pages with a lot of gorgeous artwork, but also it takes a lot less time to read through one of those than a normal like full text book. Okay, that's all I have for you this week. I will see you. Oh, actually, I'm gonna be taking next week off. I'm finally getting to see my parents and sister and other family for the first time in like a year and a half, so I'm excited about that. But I will be back with another video in 2 weeks, so look out for that. Okay, I hope you all have a wonderful week. Do something nice for yourself. Maybe do something nice for others. I don't know. Up to you. I'll see you in the next one.